Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Music Rewind, a podcast where we look to tell the stories behind our favorite albums. I'm your host, Steve Epley, and in each episode I will invite a guest on to tell us about their favorite music album, how they discovered it, and what makes it special to them. So, I wanted to take a moment and thank you all for listening and supporting the show. With the limited operation we've got here, it's all thanks to you that we were able to keep growing with more amazing guests and bonus episodes. I will ask you, though, if you are enjoying Music Rewind, please check out the links in our show notes. They will take you to either our Patreon, where you can donate and support the show and get special content on the side, or to our amazing sponsors, Zounds for all your audio production needs, and also Drizzly, which will deliver your favorite beer, wine, or spirit straight to your door. This all helps us keep the show going. Thanks again, and now on with the show. Joining me today is musician and fellow podcaster Ryan Pak. Ryan is the host of Soundtrack Your Life podcast, a show that talks about great movie soundtracks and how they are important to us all. Ryan's show was recently featured in the Podchaser Top 50 Shows to Discover in May 2022. Welcome, Ryan, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, glad you're joining us. Big fan of your show. I've listened to pretty much every episode. Really enjoy it.
Wow, thank you so much.
So, Ryan, let's jump into this. What album would you like to bring to the table, and what makes it special to you?
So I wanted to talk about Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. I would say over the past 20 years, I have not seen a band live as often as I've seen Wilco, so they're definitely one of my favorites. And I think among Wilco fans, they would agree this is their most important album.
Yeah, this was a first-time listen for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had heard various songs from Wilco over the years, caught them at Bonnaroo once, but never really dove into what they had.
Was that Bonnaroo 2013 by any chance?
No, it was before that.
Okay. I was there at 2013 and they played.
I can't remember which one. I went 5 years in a row and caught a lot of these bands on the upswing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think 2011 was my last one, I think.
Oh, okay. I only went once and it was 2013.
That's a good time. But then kids came along and that changes the festival availability.
Yes. I'm currently in that boat.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you. But I think this is a great album, and I listen to your show pretty often, so I feel like it slots in really nicely along like the Soft Bulletin and Diary, and even like Throwing Copper to a certain extent. These are, I feel like, really big, important like alt rock albums of the last 20 to 30 years.
Oh, absolutely. This was an amazing album. Not what I expected at all, because when I think of Wilco, I think of more their earlier stuff with the not country, but similar to country roots.
Right.
And this was not that.
Yeah, this is kind of their first, like, we're not going to even have anything that sounds like country on this album.
Yeah. I mean, there were times it reminded me of kind of a and this is a great compliment, a pre-Dark Side of the Moon Pink Floyd at times.
I can see that.
Where they were really starting to experiment with sounds.
Yeah, I mean, they've always been like a big production band. They've always invested. I mean, they own their own studio. But yeah, I would say this is the first time where they're really like playing with noise.
Mm-hmm. So how did you discover this album?
So back in high school, I had a friend who I guess got me into Wilco. So around the time of Being There, which is their second album. So he bought that album. I think I bought the next one, Summer Teeth. And then there was the collaboration album with Billy Bragg, Mermaid Avenue. And so I was a pretty big fan of Wilco at this point. And then when this album came out, I was in college and I had a roommate who, had heard of Wilco, they were at the time kind of every band's favorite band.
Yeah.
And so when this came out, because they collaborated with Jim O'Rourke on it, and my friend was a big Sonic Youth fan, it kind of piqued his interest to like really dive into this album, and it kind of became like one of the favorite things to like spin in the apartment.
What makes this album really jump to the top of your list?
It's the 20th anniversary of this album, so they've been promoting that.
Okay.
And for me, it was like, okay, like what album, if I were to talk about one album on a podcast,
this would be it.
Makes sense. And this would be it. Like it's, one of my favorites. They're definitely one of my favorite bands. And the mythology of this album is really fun to talk about. Like there's a really fun story about how this became kind of this underdog success story.
So are you referring to how they kind of bought it from the studio?
Yeah, so they bought it from their label, and then they got signed to a different part of that same label. So I think they said that we basically got paid for the same album twice.
Well, I think the way I was reading it was that the label at first was saying, we want, the radio hits, and that's not the direction they wanted to go. They being Jeff Tweedy, the leading force there. And so my understanding is they bought it for like 50 grand, and then they were able to go off and do their own thing.
Yeah, well, at least my understanding was the label didn't want to release it because there was no radio single, so they got dropped.
Okay.
And then they reshopped it to whoever, and then I believe this is Warner Brothers. A different wing of Warner Brothers ended up picking them up. So Warner Brothers basically paid them twice for the same set of recordings.
Well, and then there's also the elephant that's around this album, which is September 11th, because this album was released on streaming only September 18th, 2001. And then it was released in stores April 23rd. But I mean, to be released in anything in September of 2001 is going to get a bit overshadowed.
Yeah, and they have a song called Ashes of American Flags. And that song has a lyric about tall buildings. No, it's not that song. So they have that for one. Yeah. And then they have Jesus, etc., which has in the chorus, tall buildings shake as one of the lines.
Yeah, that's as creepy and odd as you can get. Because it was all recorded before September 11th.
Right.
But it had those lyrics. But according to interviews, this album helps many people get through that particular event.
Yeah, I think that helped me. I think that helped my myself and my friends for sure. Like there's definitely like a sadness to the album.
Indeed.
And but it was also just so good. I'm a person that likes sad music. So, it was right up my alley. I believe that we were able to get our hands on it because the band leaked the album on the internet themselves.
Oh, that must be the streaming only release.
Yeah, because like streaming wasn't really a thing in 2001.
Well, LimeWire was. Wow. going strong in 2001.
So I think when they got dropped the first time, they just leaked it. And then April of 2002, which is like the official release date, which is what they're celebrating on tour right now.
Makes sense.
That's when the physical copy came out, and that was on the other wing of Warner Brothers Records.
Gotcha. Well, you're right. This whole album is melancholy and retrospective at times. There's a few jaunty tunes in there, but largely it deals with, say, loss, pain, love, all wrapped into one.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
How do you listen to this album? Do you jump around, or do you go from front to back?
Typically I go front to back with the album. Occasionally I'll skip around, but like that first song, I'm Trying to Break Your Heart, is just like such a powerhouse. It's like, why am I skipping this song? Like, obviously if I'm going to listen to this album, I'm going to start there.
Yeah, that was a great one to listen to and start off with. I try to listen to it when I can with the earmuff headphones so that I'm canceling out as much as possible. And there's a lot going on in that song. Say, like we talked earlier, with just the sounds and the noises.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very disorienting if you've never heard the album before. It's like, whoa, there's drums in weird places that I didn't expect them to be, and there's like clanking bottles.
Rhythmic noise is one of my notes.
Yeah, and so there's a documentary that came out after this album called, I think it is called I'm Trying to Break Your Heart. And it's this documentary filmmaker came to record the album, or record them recording the album. And it obviously turned into much more than that. And the documentary starts with like a demo version of the song, and it's really just Jeff Tweedy and an acoustic guitar just singing it kind of straight through. So they really kind of deconstructed the song and made it a whole nother thing.
That's really cool. I have to check that out.
Yeah, it's great. Like, it was great timing. I think he said in an interview, like the first day he showed up, they had just fired their drummer.
Really?
Yeah. And so this album kind of represents like this new era of Wilco, because the drummer Ken got fired, and then Jay Bennett, I think, left after the album was finished.
That I did read, yeah.
And then I think after the next album, Ghost is Born, I think Leroy left. So there was a lot of turnover in the band around this time. And then they became this kind of live touring powerhouse after this, when they brought in like Pat and McHale and, of course, Nels Cline.
Usually when you've got that kind of turmoil going on in the band, people leaving, people getting fired, the album will reflect that. But this is kind of different. They turned out a, kind of a seminal album here for their career.
Yeah, I think when there's a lot of turmoil, it either like breaks up the band or they put out like their best work.
Yeah. So, well, walk me through the album. If you want to go, we can go track by track and you can tell me your thoughts on each.
So we already talked about a little bit about I'm Trying to Break Your Heart. It's one of the longer songs on the album, which I'm not used to. I'm used to album openers kind of like being short and sweet and kind of getting you like pumped up for the album. While this one, it's a really long and kind of disorienting song. Like, it kind of ends in just like a collage of noise.
Yeah. The piano and clinks and static and feedback, and there's all kinds of, I don't say junk is a bad word, but there's just a lot going on in that second part of the song. Yeah.
And it's a great way to start the album. It kind of tells you what to kind of expect as you go throughout the album. But then like the second song, Camera, is like the most direct and most old Wilco sounding song, in my opinion.
I could see that.
I need a camera to my eye,
It's very straightforward. It's Camera with a K.
Yeah. Interesting.
They ended up
choice there.
Releasing Camera with a C later, which is a much noisier version of that song.
I mean, I like this. I mean, I have my notes saying it's a good rock song. It like you said, it's straight to the point. There's not a lot of the extras. So I'm curious what a version of this song with the extras would sound like.
A lot of distortion. I think they picked the right version of the song.
Yeah, interesting lyrics as far as the way I took it was a guy is trying to see the truth in life and he sees it only through a camera.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have, I think this is where the album starts to get really interesting. Radio Cure On.
Yeah. Yeah, Radio Cure is an interesting one. Very, very haunting sounding.
Yeah, and it's probably the song that took me the longest to like enjoy.
I think that's fair.
Oh, distance has no way of making love understandable.
I mean, this album took several listens as a whole to me to really grip onto.
Yeah.
This one could be difficult to listen to if you're not really into the album.
Right. Wilco is kind of, for people who don't like Wilco, they kind of call them like boring dad rock, and I feel like this kind of fits into that category.
Well, as a former signal soldier for the Army, there's certain parts of this album that hit home with the radio aspects of it.
Right.
So I can appreciate what they put in there for those.
Yeah, and because I have no background in that sort of radio stuff, for the longest time, I used to call this album Yankee Foxtrot Hotel because it just came off the tongue a lot easier.
Now, for those that don't know, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot is the phonetic spelling of when you use the alphabet over the air, you don't say A, B, C, D. You would say Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, etc. And so YHF is Yankee Hotel Foxtrot when you're speaking on the radio.
Right. But I was just like, doesn't Yankee Foxtrot Hotel just sound better?
When I first typed it the first couple times, I was typing Whiskey Hotel Foxtrot just from memory, something from my particular past. That was a call sign of one of our sites for years. Those three letters, and I had to go back and correct all my notes, put Yankee in there.
Yeah, I think a brewery called a beer like Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, so it'd be WTF.
Yeah, you hear that one a lot. That's a very common one in the Army.
So I feel like War on War is one of the poppier songs on this album, which doesn't really lean into pop.
This is one of those that I referenced earlier with saying it's a jaunty tune. It's more upbeat, but then it reversely has very dark lyrics.
Yeah, that's a big thing with Jeff Tweedy. He likes to do that.
I like songs that do that. That's one of my really the things that I like on a lot of albums. The Who I talked about a couple weeks ago with Quadrophenia has that on several where the song doesn't necessarily match the lyrics, and that's a plus for me.
Yeah, I like when they juxtapose kind of the tone of the song and the tone of the lyrics.
Yeah. This one being obviously about the futility of war.
Right.
Or any conflict, but I mean, obviously war in the title.
War on War.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the more upbeat songs. I like the kind of, like, you can't tell if it's a synthesizer or if it's like a guitar through a lot of effects on the I guess it's the chorus. There's like the chorus and then there's like just the like guitar freak out part, which I'm not sure if that counts as the chorus.
I like that feedback guitar, wiener. I'm not going to try and imitate guitar, but you get what I'm saying. I like that transition between the verses.
Yeah, I think it's what makes the song kind of pop. Like if they didn't have that part, it would just it wouldn't be interesting enough. Like it needs that kind of dynamic shift.
I think I can agree with that.
Like I think it's the one thing that like Camera lacks.
Yeah, I could. Well, Camera's got a little bit of it if I'm remembering right, but Camera is more of a, like we said earlier, a straightforward rock song. It doesn't have a lot of the experimentation on it.
Yeah, like for me, it just lacks like a little bit of a dynamic sort of thing. Though I think they kind of amp it up a little bit more when they play it live. But like I said, there's no skips on this album.
How many times have you seen them live?
I think 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've seen them a lot. And I've seen Jeff Tweedy solo as well, and I'm not counting that in the 10.
When he goes solo, is it more of a acoustic set or is he go a full rock band.
Yeah, when I saw him, it was literally just him and a guitar.
That'd be cool to see, though. That would be neat.
So now we're on Jesus, etc.
Yeah, Jesus, etc. The eternal quest for what does it all mean?
And it's kind of the big hit from this album. Not like a radio hit, but it's definitely one of the songs that they play live every time.
I like this song musically. I mean, the lyrics get, obviously we talked about the prophetic stuff with 9/11, the tall building shakes and stuff. Voices escape singing sad songs and all that. But what I like about the song is there's a fiddle in there.
Yep.
And that's, I enjoyed that particular portion of the song.
Yeah, it's a very pretty song. And when they play it live now, I believe there's a lot more organ in it. So it almost gets kind of
Okay.
not jazzy, but it gives it a little bit of a darker tone. I mean, they've been playing this song for 20 years, so they're always trying to figure out different ways to make it interesting to play without, completely changing it.
Wouldn't mind hearing a whole live set of just this song, the album in its entirety. I think that'd be.
This is the one album where if they didn't play anything off of it, like people would complain.
Every band's got one.
They're kind of like, I don't want to compare them necessarily to Pearl Jam, but there are some bands that only play the hits when you see them live. And then there's other bands where they'll play almost a completely different set every night. And Wilco falls into that category, which is why I've been able to justify going to see them so many times, because it's like, well, they're going to dig deep. They're going to play something I've never heard. It's not going to just be like the same songs, just in a different order.
How many studio albums they have? Because this was their fourth, I believe.
Yeah, this was their fourth. I think they're up to like 10 or 11 now. I don't remember. They just released a new album like 2 weeks ago.
That's great. I mean, when you got that deep of a catalog, you can have a very fluid set list each night. That's cool.
Yeah, so I've really enjoyed that, but they will always play this song. They will always play a handful of tracks from this album. I always get the biggest reaction.
Then that leads into Ashes of American Flags, which is a slower acoustic tune.
Yeah, it's a slow song. It's pretty sparse on the album, but like I alluded to earlier with their new live band. So this song is really popular live because they just give Nils Klein like 4 minutes to solo at the end of the song, and people eat that up.
I'm personally not the biggest fan of the lyrics of this particular track. That's just me. I would like to salute the ashes of the American flags. It gets a little bit too far for me.
Sure.
But musically, I did like it. I like the how they can go jaunty and then slow down for the acoustics. And "All My Lies Are Wishes" is a great line. That's a deep thought right there.
How will it ever come? All my lies are always wishes. I know I will die if I can come back new.
I think this is a really good showcase of Jeff Tweedy as a lyricist. I know that you're not a fan of the Ashes of American Flags line, but a lot of the imagery I think in the song is some of his better work on this album.
It goes well with the theme of this album. I don't want to say depression, because it's not that. It's more like a nihilistic view of things. If this was a theme as far as the whole album, things have not gone the narrator's way, and there's a lot of regret. And right there, all my lies are wishes. So if he's saying things that he wished were true in a lot of these songs through the lyrics.
Yeah, that's fair.
So then next we've got Heavy Metal Drummer, which was a fun song.
Yeah, this is a fun song that was kind of earmarked as the single. I mean, obviously they got dropped once because they didn't feel like there was a single on this album. But the second time around, this is kind of what was picked. And it is like the most immediate earworm of a song. And I believe that like he'll change the lyrics to the verses when they play it live.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just kind of for fun.
Shiny, shiny pants and bleached blonde hair. A double kick drum by the river in the summer. She fell in love with the drummer. Another then another. She fell in love.
Like I said, they've been playing these songs like every show for 20 years. So they're always trying to find ways to make it fun.
And so I read about this one, and I misinterpreted it. I thought they were just singing about the good old days, playing Kiss covers and stuff. But then found an interview with Tweedy, and he said, and I'm quoting him here, "I would sit there and scoff and feel superior to all the heavy metal bar bands with the big hair and the spandex. So who was losing? Me. I was. Those guys were getting laid. They were deluding themselves into thinking they were going to be huge stars, and they were living. But I was dead, and I was staring into my drink."
That sounds about right for Jeff Tweedy around this time. He's much happier now.
Oh, that's good.
Still writes dark songs, but he's happier now.
Yeah, whenever you go through a dark album, I always hope that whoever was writing those lyrics and in that dark place found happiness at some point.
Yeah, I think he did. But yeah, I think when he switches the lyrics, he basically is poking fun at his own drummer.
Oh, really?
He's got a verse about playing at the Battle of the Bands.
But then that goes into track 8, which is "I'm the Man Who Loves You." And this is probably my favorite track on the album. I really liked this one.
Yeah, it's, kind of like Heavy Metal Drummer. It's, an earworm. It doesn't, you don't need repeated listens to enjoy this one.
If I could, I would just hold your hand and you'd understand. I'm the man who loves you.
Now, this one was a good guitar track, and then it turns into a nice chaotic jam towards the end.
Yeah, it's a song that kind of falls apart on purpose.
That's a great way to put it. It really is. This one would have been fun to be a fly on the wall during the recording of, seeing how it got put together.
Yeah. Because you could argue, like, if you were in the studio as like a producer, like, do we really need that riff at the beginning? Can't we just like start where it's like...
Oh, that's the best. That's one of the best parts of the song.
No, I'm not saying I think it's bad, but I could see like someone in the studio being like, do we really need that? Like, why are we starting there?
No, this is probably one I'll take away and put in my regular playlist. I like that one a lot.
Oh, and they kill it live, as you can only imagine.
I bet this one would be really cool live. Yeah, I'll have to search and see if there's a YouTube video of that.
Yeah, because they have 3 guitarists now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, Pat is a multi-instrumentalist, but he plays guitar, and he plays guitar very well.
So then we get to track 9, which is Pot Kettle Black.
Yeah. So this song, like, I'm kind of up and down with it. Like, I think when I first started listening to this album, this was one of my favorites. And then it kind of became one of the more boring songs.
Crazy rounds, rockets. Where's the magic wand? Empty out your pockets. Words without a song.
And then after not like seeing it live, I started craving it live. And then I got really excited when they would play it live. So it's, I feel like it's kind of like Camera, where it's a little bit on the more straightforward side.
I could see that. It's the start of the end of the album, the final 3 tracks, which are all dark in their own way.
They're all dark, and this is the most normal of the 3.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, you're very right.
So I think it's kind of like the placement in the album that makes it not interesting. You have these 2 really upbeat, fun songs with Heavy Metal Drummer and I'm the Man Who Loves You. And then you have these experimental, dark songs in Poor Places and Reservations. And then you have Pot Kettle Black, which is like, it's nice.
It's nice. Yeah, when you put it that way, it's in a tough spot in the set list, where a normal album, and I'll say that with my own air quotes there, a normal album would have kind of a palate cleanser there.
Yeah, so I guess it's the palate cleanser. It's the valley between 2 very high peaks, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Not skippable. It's still a good tune. But yeah, its placement between previous 2 and the final 2, you can't put this track with either one of those groups whatsoever.
No.
So then into Poor Places.
Yeah, and this is a song that is probably one of my favorites off the album. It starts off so sparse, and then it gets, it's the whole dynamic thing I was talking about earlier. Like, it starts so low, and then it starts to build up, and then it gets really high. And I really love everything they did with the structure of this song.
These bags have been pulled, and I really want to see you tonight. Someone ties a bow in my backyard to show.
I love the piano rhythm throughout the whole song. That stays steady while everything you said is going in a bit of more valleys, the up and down. Yeah, and then there's like a interesting musical bridge at about 3 minutes with some interesting sounds, you could say. But then it ends with the Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. The actual radio call from a live radio.
Yes. And I believe the line, I'm the Man Who Loves You, comes near the end as well. Like over all the noise.
Okay. I mean, this is real interesting. I mean, I don't quite get what Yankee Hotel Foxtrot is supposed to mean, other than just the radio to me would symbolize distance, always distance. So whoever he's trying to talk to in this entire album, there's always a distance between him and his love, his whatever, whoever he's trying to talk to and can't. And I don't know, maybe he just liked the way Yankee Hotel Foxtrot sounded. It's 3 letters.
Yeah, I want to say that at one point I knew exactly why it was called Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's the only thing I could really find is that it was taken from Israel's intelligence agency. There was a CONET project over there, and that's where they sampled that particular lady saying it over the radio. I think it was a lady. It was not, I'm sorry, but I thought it was.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I ever heard that.
But yeah, and it trails for a couple minutes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting but fascinating way to end that song.
Yeah, and it's almost a surprise that there's anything after that. Like for a lot of bands, like that's how you end an album.
That could easily have been the end, yes. Because then Reservations, the final track, is a very somber close to this album.
Yeah.
I've got reservations.
it's atmospheric and lots going on at times, kind of like track one. So it does bookend the album well in that way.
Yeah, I kind of almost see Reservations as like the end credit song for this album.
Yeah.
Like Poor Places is the end of the movie, and Reservations is like fade to black. Here's the credits.
Especially the second half of the song. I mean, I thought the song was over. There's a quiet break in the middle, and then there's a very psychedelic style instrumental 3 minutes to close it out with I was fascinated. I listened to it like several times. I kept rewinding the track and listened to that over and over again, because there's a piano chord and then it creaks.
Mm-hmm.
That was fascinating to me how they did that. And I kept listening to it over and over again. It was a single piano chord, and then almost like the actual piano itself would creak when that chord ended. It was very weird.
Yeah, and that's why I think my friend really enjoyed it, because it kind of had like these weird quirks that you would find with like more experimental rock bands like Sonic Youth or like the Flaming Lips. Like they would do things like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Having listened now to the Soft Bulletin many times, I see the connection there quite a bit.
Yeah, so the person who mixed the album, his name is Jim O'Rourke, and he's known for producing a lot of indie bands and kind of bringing kind of an eclectic sort of flavor to their music. And like one album that I really enjoy that he produced is called Come Pick Me Up by Superchunk, and they're kind of more of a straightforward rock band, almost a little bit like pop punk. And when he worked with them, he was like, hey, let's bring strings and horns and put them on like some of these tracks. And it works, but like they're not a band where you would think of doing that. And so when he linked up with Wilco, I think he was like, let's push your sound in a different direction than you've pushed it on all these other albums. Like they're always trying something new.
It's a running theme throughout many of the albums the show has covered, where that producer is always, the fifth Beatle in the room as far as what people expect of them. And then that producer, either by pushing them, like you said, to try something different, or by better understanding what they're trying to get across than your average studio producer would. That special guy in the booth, there's always a bit of magic there. And I have a new appreciation for that particular role in all of these albums.
Yeah, and since he has ties to Sonic Youth, and so does Nels Cline, I haven't read it anywhere, but I feel like he had something to do with Nels Cline joining Wilco. And if you talk to anyone who has seen Wilco as many times as I have, or half as many times as I have, they're always talking about like, Nels Cline did this solo, or during this song, Nels Cline did this with his guitar. And, he kind of helped them after this album came out. He kind of helped make them kind of the live behemoth that they are now.
That's cool. I'm glad they kind of straightened their lineup out, and they're on a hot streak. Well, have been for 20 years now.
Yeah. So like if they released a live album, I think in 2005, called Kicking Television, and it has a lot of songs from this album. One because it's the biggest album, but two because they had only released one album after this when they did the live album.
Okay.
But you can hear like how epic these songs are with like I think they're a 6-person band now.
Okay.
Not that like you need anything else to appreciate these songs, but like this is why like they have their own festival now, and this is why they are really high on the lineup on when they play Bonnaroo or Outside Lands or whatever festival. Like they became like a live institution.
Yeah, I think Pearl Jam is a. I wouldn't put them on the level of Pearl Jam just because Pearl Jam is special to me from childhood. But it's a good comparison as far as the longevity they have, the following. That's the word I'm looking for. They have a very dedicated following,
Right?
and I don't know if you heard our Pearl Jam episode, but my friend Mike, he's seen Pearl Jam over 30 times. So and he compared Pearl Jam to the Grateful Dead. So there's like each new generation has their own type of band of that nature. And Wilco's definitely in that realm.
Right. And like with Pearl Jam, like they don't have to play Jeremy at every show. People don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Wilco doesn't have to play, I don't know, whatever their biggest radio single has been. I mean, they could probably skip Jesus, etc. But I think every time I've seen them, they played it. They could probably skip it, and people probably wouldn't mind too much because they just have so many other songs.
Is Wilco the kind of band that has a lot of B-sides out there that people kind of hunt for?
I think they did with this album and the album after Ghost is Born. From the last few albums, I don't think people have been hunting the B-sides as much, but I think for like the first 5 or 6 albums, I think people are really into the B-sides.
It seems to be a dying quest in this day and age of MP3s and streaming services.
Yeah.
That's a relic of the CD era.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So it could be just that. And to kind of go back to your Pearl Jam Grateful Dead comparison, I believe Wilco has brought out Bob Ware during like an encore or two.
Oh yeah.
To jam on some Dead with him. So I definitely think that comparison works.
That's awesome. So this album made your top spot. What albums would be on your short list that could have made your top spot?
That is a good question. So 2 of the albums that would have made it that you've already done would be Diary by Sunny Day Real Estate and Soft Bulletin by the Flaming Lips. As far as hip hop albums go, I think B is definitely up there for me.
Those are all great albums. I'm glad they were brought to the table.
I think if this album had already been picked or something, I probably either would have gone with a Fugazi album.
They keep coming up on short lists. You're like the 4th person to mention Fugazi.
Yeah, they're so good. And they're just kind of fun to talk about because they are like the epitome of, like we're just gonna start our own label and we're not gonna make any advertisements, no videos, no songs for radio. Like we're just gonna do everything ourselves and hop in a van, and they're fun to talk about because they just have so many great like ideals. And we're actually doing an episode on a documentary that the band that Fugazi released in 2001 called Instrument, where it kind of shows the first 10 years of Fugazi from 1988 to 1997.
That's cool.
And like so much of their lead singer Ian MacKaye gets like distorted through the lens of like he's kind of this idealistic sort of, like he's they call him the leader of like, or the starter of straight edge, that whole movement. And he's a guy with strong principles, and I think that kind of gets distorted to like he must be like just this miserable person to be around all the time. But like I think it's just kind of one of those like he believes what he believes, but he's not gonna like flip out on you because you believe something different. And I think that gets distorted a lot, even through like the lens of fans. Like I think people are just like, oh, like he knew Dave Grohl when Dave Grohl was like a teenager, but he must like hate what the Foo Fighters have become. And then on the Foo Fighters Sonic Highways documentary, he shows up when they're in DC and just hangs out in the studio with them. Like you know, Dave's his friend, so he's gonna go see his friend when he's in town. Like, there's this weird perception that he's, this gatekeeper, judgmental person.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I'll have to watch that documentary before your episode comes out.
Yeah, it's not like the most fun watch. It's not what you expect a rock documentary to be, if that helps.
There's a new documentary out for the Blind Melon lead singer
Shannon Hoon. Yeah.
Yeah. All I Can Say, I think is called. Have you watched that yet?
No, I just heard of it when you mentioned it.
Check out the trailer. Even the trailer is hard to watch because he was like Val Kilmer, where he was videotaping every day of his life.
Oh no.
And you know how he spiraled towards the end. But so at the beginning in the trailer really, gives you goosebumps, and I don't even know if I will watch it because the beginning is so happy. And everybody, I mean, they're skyrocket, the no rain, all that, and then it shows him spiraling all the way to the end.
Oh, see, the instrument is kind of like the opposite of that because there is like no drama in the entire documentary. Like, this is just like a day in the life of Fugazi for 10 years. There's like no real, there's no real bad guy. Even though, they had a stance to not sign with the major label and all this stuff, like, it doesn't come up. Like, it's not like you have these suits. They're having meetings with suits and telling them to like get out of their office or whatever. Like, yeah, it's just like following them around for 10 years. And there's a funny conversation in the studio where the drummer is like, yeah, my sister's boyfriend thinks that like we just live in a cabin and just eat rice. Like no electricity or something.
Fugazi's definitely a band I need to seek out and listen to their stuff and learn more about. With as much as they're mentioned on this particular show and the influence they've had on the listeners here, I need to seek them out more.
Yeah, and they're a band that has evolved a lot from the beginning. They came out, or Ian came out of Minor Threat, which everyone knows is like this legendary hardcore band. And so Fugazi kind of starts out with those sort of roots. And then, I mean, their last album, like, is, I wouldn't call it like a 180, but you can tell that they've grown a ton since the first record.
That's good. I mean, any band that has longevity is going to evolve. And that's one of the more fascinating things to see from long-standing bands. Like you mentioned the Foo Fighters, Color and the Shape doesn't sound anything like their last couple albums. They've evolved quite a bit.
Right.
Both musically, lyrically. Sonic Highway, as you mentioned, is one of my favorites from the Foo Fighters. I love that album. I love how they put it together, and I love the documentary about it. That was a really good one.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I'm sure every band is like, I wish we could record in 8 different studios.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I like any artist that doesn't evolve in interesting ways.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's stagnant, if it's just the same thing, album after album, it gets old. I mean, you gotta change something. It doesn't have to be drastic, but if you can't tell the difference between, 3 straight albums, then you're going to lose some listeners.
Right. Yeah, that's totally correct. Yeah, I mean, bands may stagnate at some point, but if there wasn't growth to get you to that point, you're probably jumping off that train.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the greats, your Beatles, Pink Floyd, The Who, because their beginnings and ends completely different from each other.
Right. And to bring it back to Wilco, like their first 6 albums, none of them sound alike at all.
The one before this, I think, is one. You Are My Face is a really good track that I like. I can't remember the name of the album. I think it starts with an S.
Oh, that's Sky Blue Sky.
Yeah, that's it. Me and my dad brothers, we have this thing where we'll make a CD, 10 tracks, no labels, and everybody gets to guess who's the singer, who's the band, or who's the artist, what's the song name. And from my father to me to my youngest brother, you've got like a span of 40 years there. So you get a lot of interesting tracks on there. And my older little brother, Tony, he put that Wilco track on there, and I was a big fan of that track ever since he did that. It was one of my favorite ones he put on a track, or put on one of those albums. But that was really all I knew of Wilco, other than just catching him at Bonnaroo briefly.
That's interesting, because Sky Blue Sky is the first Wilco album with that new lineup that I was talking about.
Okay.
And they recorded that album live. Like everyone in the same room live. Yeah, so You Are My Face.
Oh, okay, I guess.
You know, so everything is, a single take.
I need to check out that whole album too. I'm bad about that sometimes. I'll find a song I like, I'll listen to it, but I've never circled back to find the actual full album and listen to it.
I remember a lot of fans kind of backlashing with that album.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's so straightforward. And, if you're recording things live, that's how it's going to sound.
Yeah.
But it's the first one with the new lineup, and yeah, it's kind of why people call them dad rock. There's a couple songs on there especially where it's like, this is kind of dad rocky.
I could, putting my 7-year-old son's shoes on, I could see him listening to this as I am and staring at me like, this is your music, Dad. Like this, I could totally see that point of view.
But people have come back around to embrace that album.
The one track I know off of it, I liked it. So
yeah, it's a good record, and it's got some if it's not my favorite, but it definitely has some really great songs.
So, tell us about your podcast.
So Soundtrack Your Life is a podcast where we talk about soundtracks, mostly movie soundtracks, but we have done a Broadway soundtrack, and we are coming out with a couple people doing TV soundtracks.
Oh, okay.
And it's an interview podcast for the most part, where we talk about why someone loves the soundtrack. A lot of times it has nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah, I can see some of those, because I've listened to, say, pretty much most of them. Airheads, Almost Famous, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and Josie and the Pussycats are standouts for me.
Okay.
Those were really great episodes, mainly because I love those movies and those soundtracks. I gravitated towards those first.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, those are the good old rock and roll movies, right?
Well, or Brother, We're Out, though.
Not so quite a rock and roll movie, but it's definitely a good music movie, I guess.
Yeah. That's a fantastic soundtrack. That's the Appalachian music, and just I love that soundtrack. It's great. But then, like Airheads, it wasn't necessarily a soundtrack, as that's a fun movie, and it has all those little bits that if you're not, I'm a music fan. Obviously, I have a music podcast, right, and I caught a lot of the little inside stuff in Airheads. But listening to you guys, you and whoever your guest was for that particular one, I learned more about the music, like the Easter eggs almost throughout that whole movie, that I never would have caught, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's fun to kind of really dive deeper into these things, like with Josie and the Pussycats, to find out all these like big name artists for writing songs for the band.
Yeah, I knew Fountains of Wayne.
Adam Schlesinger.
Yes, Schlesinger. I knew he was heavily involved, but I didn't know the guy from Counting Crows was in there.
Right.
And several others. Just didn't know that stuff.
Oh, so we're coming out with an episode on School of Rock.
Okay.
And Jim O'Rourke, who we talked about in this episode, he was hired as a musical consultant to help make sure that the kids were playing things in the right rhythm. And so we're doing that coming up. And I have an interview with a songwriter, soundtrack composer who scored School of Rock and wrote the song by Jack Black's old band that they play at the Battle of the Bands.
No Vacancy.
They have a song at the end of the movie called Heal Me, I'm Heartsick. And spoiler alert, the guy who wrote the song was told to write a song in the style of Creed.
Oh God, I can picture it.
Those are his words. I was told to write the song in the style of Creed.
Well, and the guy that plays the singer of that band in the movie is the dude from Rent.
Adam Pascal, yeah.
Pascal, that's it. Yeah. And he does well. I mean, I could totally see him playing singing in the Creed style. Now I'm picturing it.
So we've got some fun episodes coming up, but yeah, I love diving into like they got who to write that song. They put together a cover band of people from Radiohead to cover songs for this movie. Like, there's some pretty wild things like that. Oh, Radiohead, I guess, would be on my short list too. But I believe you have already done In Rainbows, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was a fun album. That was great. And I think for School of Rock, didn't Jack Black do like a video letter to Led Zeppelin in order to like get permission to use the Immigrant Song?
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, like just because they're so stingy with their music for movies, at least they used to be.
Except when Marvel shows up with a blank check.
Yeah, used to be. We'll take Marvel money.
I did see Jack Black sing Immigrant Song.
Oh, yeah?
So like the Foo Fighters did like a Dave Grohl birthday show, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And at one point, Jack Black comes out with Slash and they played Immigrant Song.
Oh, damn. That'd be cool. I would love to see that.
I could do a whole episode about that whole show.
Well, I hope you at least mentioned that Jack Black's character needs to be in jail for a long, long time. In reality.
Yes, we did talk about that.
Okay. As a parent now, you watch that movie, you're like, what the hell, man?
Well, he shouldn't have even gone into the classroom. Like, they never even checked ID.
Nothing. Oh, yeah. That's one of those that I love the movie. It's great. And I love Jack Black. But when you think about it in a reality filter, it's like, oh, no, this guy needs to be put away for a long time.
Yes, we did bring that up.
Okay, good.
Still love the movie.
Yeah, you still love the movie. Well, other than your podcast, is there anything else you'd like to pitch or tell our listeners extras before we wrap this up?
I'm working on some stuff, but not to the point where I can announce anything.
Fair enough.
But I hope to release some music at some point in the next.
Oh, excellent.
In the next 10 years or so. I don't know. I'm in a band with some dads, so schedules are kind of hard to coordinate sometimes. But I'll have music out at some point.
Well, from a young child perspective, I've been where you are, and good luck, my man.
Thank you.
The sleepless nights do go away.
I cannot wait.
All right. Well, Ryan, I'd like to thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure to sit and talk to you about Wilco's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
Yeah, it was really fun to talk about that and to kind of dig up the history of that album again.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thanks for showing me another hidden gem that I didn't really know was there.
Oh, just in time for the 11 LP Super Deluxe 20th Anniversary edition to come out.
If I get some sponsors, maybe I'll be able to buy that.
You can start a Patreon and have people pay for it.
A GoFundMe just to buy a special edition.
Yeah, I was like, how many records? I can't afford that.
Oh, time to listen to that. Hell.
Also that.
Thank you for listening to Music Rewind, a podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Future episodes are up on our Patreon, and you can always just buy us a coffee to help the show. As I always say, listen to the full album. Until next time.
A podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Back to you, anchors.